and welcome back to Otaku no Video. As always, thank you very much for joining me for a review of Tales from Earthsea, a recent Studio Ghibli film, which you may recognize as being based off of novels by Ursula K. LeGuin. Now, this is a perfect example of a film where knowing where the film comes from really informs you about what the film is and gives you a much more complete perspective on the film. The Earthsea books were very famous within the fantasy world. College professors talk about the Earthsea novels. They are considered one of the top tier fantasy series within fantasy literature. And Studio Ghibli had been wanting to make an Earthsea film for quite a while. Initially, LeGuin didn't really want them to do it. Finally, she relented, and the result was Tales from Earthsea. Unfortunately, when that happened, Ghibli was going through some changes internally with directors and so forth, and they kind of had to scramble to find a director who'd work for this. And finally, Hayao Miyazaki's son, Goro Miyazaki, stepped in to direct it. Now, Goro Miyazaki is not an animator. He's not an anime director. He'd actually been working as, he was running the Ghibli Museum, which is a big museum about Studio Ghibli in Japan. And so obviously he was familiar with Ghibli's work and how animation worked and so forth, but he wasn't from this industry. So that was interesting, plus the fact that he and his father then got into sort of a spat in the media between whether he was really ready for this or not. Anyway, he ended up directing the film. And the film artistically is a standard Studio Ghibli beautiful film. You know, the animation is certainly up to the quality of any other Ghibli film, and it's really nice seeing Ghibli quality applied to fantasy, a more typical fantasy world. I mean, one of the difficulties of fantasy is making it look real, making it believable. And animation is perfect for fantasy because it can render that world and make it not real, but make everything in that world have the same reality. You know, because everything's being drawn, it all looks integrated. So it really works well here, and especially things like, you know, the big landscape shots where here's the land works great in this and great in animation. You know, perfect for this kind of a thing. So that's good. And the direction overall is thoughtful and straightforward. It doesn't try to be arty. It doesn't try to overwhelm you with sensory information. Although there are a few sequences which are got a lot going on in them. But in general, it tries to be relatively utilitarian, which is good. For Goro's first film, you know, you don't want to try to be too weird in that. You want to try to communicate. And that's actually very similar to the style of the original novels. Le Guin's prose style in those novels is famous for being kind of plain, but very communicative. She's not trying for flowery language, you know, the Tolkien-esque elvish style language. She's going for something more direct. And so the directing style of this reflects that, while still, again, being very effective. Now, the characters in the film are kind of odd, and this gets down to one of the reasons why I think this movie hasn't been as popular as a lot of other Ghibli films, because it is difficult to relate to the characters. The main protagonist is a wanderer. I won't explain and spoil why he's a wanderer. You'll find that out in the first 5 minutes of the movie. But he's wandering, he's not in his homeland, and a man comes along and basically becomes his mentor. And the protagonist is still trying to figure out exactly who he wants to be and what kind of life he wants to lead. And he's a stranger in this strange land. So he has these very awkward relationships with everyone, even with his mentor. And that forms one of the core themes of the film, is what the protagonist is going to kind of do with his life. Which makes it kind of hard to relate to him and hard to relate to the other characters, because everyone's standoffish with him in some way. Some are trying to help, some are not trying to help. But you don't get that instant association, that instant appreciation and connection with these characters you do with, say, Kiki and Kiki's Delivery Service, or The Girls in My Neighbor Totoro, or films like that. And again, that's intentional. It's trying to make it's trying to tell a story about characters in that situation, which is, again, a little different. The voice work, it's a Ghibli film. No problems, no complaints. And the story overall is it doesn't have the strong through line of action that some Studio Ghibli films have, but again, I think that's intentional. This is about someone in an awkward place in his life. And also, one of the themes of the books and of the movie is about living in harmony with nature and nature's pace, which is generally slow. It's about recognizing the world around you and what's going on and trying to align yourself with those things. And not in an artsy-fartsy, new agey way, just in the sense that, you know, this is how long it takes to make dinner. Don't try to rush that. Things like that. So the film has a slower pace and is a more deliberately paced film than a lot of other Ghibli films, a lot of other films in general. It's also a rather more adult film than other Ghibli films. There's violence, there's human slavery, there's an attempted rape. There's a lot of adult stuff in this. Now, it's done very delicately and it's done in a way that isn't in your face or anything. I mean, it's done with subtlety, but there is some stuff in here that is kind of, wow, not something I'd expect from a Studio Ghibli film. And again, good on Goro for doing that in a film. And I don't think it's things that would, you know, freak people out. It's just, whoa, that's, And also, that's what these societies are like. And it's one of the important elements, is this idea that living in harmony with the world around you means recognizing its good and its bad points. And not that you accept those and just say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It does matter, but you also have to recognize that it's there. Don't just ignore it. And again, it's a theme of the movie. Now, the problem is, because the movie does integrate several different plot lines, it moves at somewhat of an awkward pace. Things happen, and then this comes in and that comes in. And like I said, it just doesn't have the strong narrative drive of a lot of other films. That's unfortunately what happens with this. So that's Tales from Earthsea, and I hope if you do get a chance to see it, that you do watch it with an open mind. If you want to talk about this or other anime or manga, stop on by my website at otakunovideo.net. We have a forum, chat room, all sorts of great ways to communicate and talk about interesting anime and manga like this. I hope to see you there, and thank you for watching.